today I'll be ranking every single sword in Blox Fruits on this beautiful tier list. And they'll be ranked based on the following criteria: how easy they are to obtain, how good they are at farming, how good they are at PvPs, and how good they are in the anime One Piece. Starting off with the katana, chances are this was your first ever sword in Blox Fruits because you could buy this for just 1,000 bellies from the sword dealer at Starter Island. The first move is the Quiet Rush, where you dash over at your opponents, and of course the Air Slash, where you just shoot out like a little blue thing at your opponent. And because it is the most easily obtainable sword in the game, it is easily the weakest sword in the game. The mastery requirements are pretty low, so it's pretty good for grinding in the first sea if you decide to be a sword main. Not gonna lie, the M1 on this is kind of clean. I love the final spin, kneel down, slash attack. All right, now let's talk about the cons. Obviously, the skills are extremely outdated. Even with the revamp, they're not very useful. The damage, incredibly low. Now, let's talk about One Piece. Common katanas appear very often, especially in Wano, where pretty much every samurai holds a katana. Unless you own one of the grade blades that exists out there, katanas are pretty much useless. As you can see here, demonstrated by Zoro, pretty much bodying every single samurai with it. They don't grant the user any special abilities and not made very durable. They just shatter upon touch, so not good in One Piece or Blox Fruits. So that being said, the katana lands a very comfortable spot in the F category. Yeah, right at the bottom. All right, next up we got the cutlass, which is very much like the katana. You can purchase it for 1,000 belly at the sword dealer. So other than the fact that the cutlass, obviously it does look a little bit different from the katana, the only other difference they share is the M1 combo looks a little bit different. The skills, as you can see, are exactly the same. Very weak damage, so they share pretty much the pros and cons. But in One Piece, there's only one named cutlass in the entire world, and that is held by none other than the former Pirate King Goldie Roger, and its name, Ace. It is of a supreme grade, which is the highest grade possible, and there are only 12 of these swords that exist in the entire world of One Piece. And because of that, this is one of the strongest and best quality swords ever made. And this was made obvious when Roger used it against the entire Rocks crew during the God Valley incident, and this blade has come out unscathed every single time. And of course, we're just referencing One Piece. We're still going to be ranking these swords based on how they are in Blox Fruits. I would have to give the cutlass lower than the katana, just because the M1 is not as good. If I was ranking it based on One Piece though, the cutlass is easy S tier, no question. All right, next up we have the dual katana. What happens when you get trash and you multiply it by 2? Double trash. The M1 abilities don't look as cool as the katana in my opinion, and the cool thing is it is relatively easy to obtain, not a lot of mastery requirements. Tornado, I was about to say, not a lot of range on the tornado. Definitely not useful in PvPs. But the con, again, very weak in terms of damage. And for a sword that is this weak, the cooldowns are insanely long, making it pretty ineffective. All that is to say, other than just grinding for some NPCs in the first sea, you really wouldn't find yourself using the dual katana in any scenario. In terms of One Piece, the most obvious person that uses dual katanas is, of course, our boy Odin, but we're saving him for a sword later on. So let's just pretend these are the two katanas that Zoro owned that Mihawk completely shattered with one slash. Although they were used against the world's strongest swordsman, so it's kind of to be expected, but they literally just shatter like glass. I mean, it was pretty pathetic. Yeah, no, not very good. Let's put it above the dual katana though, slightly better, still in the F category. All right, up next is the Iron Mace. Looks very menacing. Trust me, it really isn't. So very similar to the other 3 swords we talked about. Again, very relatively cheap to obtain. The unique thing about the Iron Mace is it is considered a heavy weapon, so actually at the end of your M1, you do like a ground smash AoE attack. The skills, Mace Smash and the Killer Combo. I will say the downside is it is relatively slow. You don't really get any mobility when you're using it. All of these skills are terrible to use while you're in the air. In One Piece, there are of course 2 very well-known characters that hold such mace. Number 1 is of course Mami Alvida. Not this one, the other one. Yeah, there you go. That's the one right there. That's a woman right there. But we're gonna talk about the other mace. You know, the one that's used by one of the former emperors of the sea, strongest creature in the world on land, sea, or air. If it's a one-on-one, Kaido will win. Yeah, that guy. Interestingly enough, his mace actually has a name. It is called the Hasaikai. When given the opportunity, this man used that mace to its absolute fullest. He one-shotted Odin and Gear 4 Luffy with it. So, dope weapon in One Piece. Not so dope in Blox Fruits. Sorry, I think it's still gotta go in the F tier. Or maybe just below the dual katana and above the katana. That's a good place. use. All right, the triple katana. Yeah, just add one more each time. You know, you ever heard of 4-sword style Zoro? But when you hold it out, obviously, very much like Zoro's 3-sword style. So the M1, decent, similar to the 2-sword style, except you do like a little dash at the end. This is yet another very easy to obtain sword. It costs like 60k over at Snow Island. Still not very expensive. The skills honestly look pretty good. And then of course, instead of a quiet rush, now you rush them violently. My understanding is both of these moves have AoE effect. Problem is the range on these moves are not so great. It also has a very slow swing speed. Now of course, talking about the triple katana, the clear candidate is Zoro. Not much to be said other than the 3-sword fighting style being extremely dope. Even just using basic old katana, Zoro make it very in Blox Fruits, I do think the triple katana is a major step up from all the swords that we've seen so far. So I will actually put this in the C tier. Not too bad, honestly. All right, next up, we got the Shark Sword. So it is another one of the 3 heavy weapons that exist in the game. So this is the first sword in the game that you can't just unlock by purchasing it. You'd actually have to defeat a boss. And that boss is, of course, the Saw. Yeah, there he is. Still relatively low mastery requirements. And honestly, the Saw is not the most difficult boss to kill. That first consecutive slashes is actually a pretty decent combo extender. Execution, absolutely insane. Just spin around in like a bunch of circles. The downside of it is this sword, of course, relatively slow, not very mobile. Your character is just like extremely vulnerable to being attacked by other players if you're using it in PvP. But for grinding, it is pretty good. Like the swords are pretty long range and the consecutive slashes is a very good move for grinding. And in the world of One Piece, this sword is actually called the Kiribachi and is used by none other than Arlong. So he uses it like a buzz saw, you know, not really even like a sword, because in the fight against Luffy, I don't think he really put it to any good use whatsoever. Like right here, Luffy literally just grabs the shark teeth and breaks it with his bare hand. So the shark saw goes in the C tier. I would say slightly below the triple katana, right there. That's a good spot. So next up, we got the twin hooks. You actually can't unlock these in the first C, even though it's only a rare category. You have to unlock it all the way over in the third C against Captain Elephant. Insane attack speed, and also the damage is honestly not too bad. It's good for combos. The first move, the Sky Cyclone, has pretty decent hitbox, prehistoric punt, terrible range. Honestly, guys, not very impressed for how difficult these are to obtain, especially with it taking 300 mastery to unlock all the skills. In the anime One Piece, these twin hooks are of course used by Jack the Drought, one of Kaido's all-stars. Honestly, guys, all we know is Jack has these swords. I don't think we ever even seen him use it. He just took them out to flex on the poor animal people of Zou and didn't really ever use it. So I honestly would put these like below the dual katana right here. Twin hooks in the F category. We're moving back down again. All right, next up, we're looking at the pipe. So this pipe can be easily purchased for 100,000 bellies. Not very difficult to obtain. Honestly, another sword after the revamp got pretty good. Here's the pipe ignition. Look at this thing. So this skill is pretty good. Not only does it deal pretty decent damage, it grants you the ability of mobility. And then you have the X move, the Dragon Blast, which my understanding is you're supposed to be able to hit multiple enemies and has pretty long range. So honestly, pretty effective for farming and PvPs, although I would say the downside of farming with this weapon is all the skills have knockback, and the M1 speed, like I said, it is relatively slow. And of course, in the anime, the pipe is infamously used by Luffy's brother, Sabo. But yeah, Sabo was seen wielding a pipe as a weapon since he was a child, and obviously that pipe went from a little one up to a pretty big one when he grew up to be an adult. I don't think there's anything special about the pipe. The way he uses it to fight is kind of like a staff. Honestly, not too bad. I will put the pipe right here in the C tier. Next up, we got the dual-headed blade, or, you know, as it's known in Blox Fruits, the headed blade. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the sword because you hold it behind your back like a ninja. The M1 also looks very clean. Look at this thing. The Z move has pretty decent damage, but not a lot of range. The X move, Raging Wind, very quick start, but unfortunately, it doesn't really like stun your enemies, so these skills are not too great for PvPs, but relatively okay for farming in the first C, I would say. Only problem is you can purchase this sword at the Master Sword Dealer for a whopping 400,000 bellies. So is it really worth it compared to the other swords that are like 10 times cheaper? And in One Piece, the dual-headed blade is of course used by the warden Hengyelbal of Impel Down. The sword name is called the Kasui, which literally means blood sucker. But he was rarely seen using it in the anime, but it is clear that he is a master at the craft. As you can see here, he was able to use it to briefly fend off Luffy, and spinning is so damn fast that he was able to generate flames from it. But at the end of the day, this is not a very important sword in the the anime or in Blox Fruits, but the concept itself is pretty cool. I would put it right below the shark saw in the C tier. All right, next up, we got the Warden Sword. This one you actually don't purchase and can be unlocked by killing the Chief Warden over at prison. Look how long these swords are, bro. The M1 slashes are pretty good. It doesn't really dash you forward, and the speed is pretty fast too, so good for auto-clicking and farming with elemental fruits. I would say though, the damage is relatively lower, just like most swords are in the first C. All the skills, I think they can deal damage on multiple targets. Look at that thing. Tornado Slash also is able to hit multiple targets. The bad thing about farming with this sword is it knocks back your enemies. And then also the ranges are not great. Like this multi-target slash, you have to be pretty close to your enemies to hit them. And of course, in the anime, Chief Warden of Impel Down, Magellan, did not even use a sword. So I'm not sure where this inspiration came from. But Queen, one of the all-stars of Kaido's crew, actually did use a blade very similar to this, and he used it against our boy Sanji in like a sneak attack, bro. Sanji ate that up and literally shattered the sword with his head though, so it must have been not that good. Honestly, I'll be generous and put it right alongside the dual-headed blade here in the C tier. All right, next up, we got one of the 3 tridents that exist in the game. This, of course, being the weakest one, just the regular old trident. This one you can unlock by killing the Fishman Lord over here in Underwater Island. We got the good old M1, which does a dash at the end, so be sure not to M1 auto-click with this thing. The skills are pretty cool. The trident throw, it pulls your enemies in. Look at that. Similar with the water pulls, it actually also pulls your enemies in towards you and then knocks them back. So honestly, this sword has some decent combo potential. The water pulse also has decent AoE and also breaks instinct. In the anime, this trident was actually seen used by Horty Jones from Fishman Island, although I don't really think he put it to any sort of use. It didn't seem like Horty liked this weapon very much, so neither do we. I really don't recommend getting it in the first C. We'll put it in the C tier. Never mind, I'll put it in the F tier. There's literally no use for this sword whatsoever. All right, next up, we got the Soul Cane. I like the way you hold this sword. This is one of actually the fastest swords in the entire game. M1 is great. It doesn't really pushes your character forward. The Z move is very quick, can break instinct, and also stuns for a very long time. And then the X move, Soul Slashes, it's a pretty good combo extender. Of course, in One Piece, the sword is used by none other than our favorite skeleton, Brook, part of the Straw Hat Pirates. The sword's name in the anime is called Soul Solid, and it has been with Brook for over 50 years. So it is said that the extreme cold underworld powers is brought to this sword, which is what allows it to freeze everything in its path, as you can see here demonstrated by Brook. But what I like the most about the sword is he actually uses it to play his violin. Like, how do you not just cut the strings right off? That makes no sense. Honestly, a solid sword, no pun intended, actually has some potential in PvP and grinding. I think it'll be our first B tier sword on this list. Congratulations. All right, onto the long sword. So this one you actually get in the second C by defeating this ugly dude over here. The M1 click does not dash you forward, so the Z move Annihilate, it actually breaks instinct, and you plant some grass. The X move Glorious Smash, one of the most sus names ever, actually has an aiming feature to it, which is pretty cool. The problem with this sword is the range is honestly not too great for both of the attacks. You can't hit from very far away. Like for Glorious Smash, how far can I aim? That's the farthest. The damage itself also very low compared to other swords in the rare categories. And in One Piece, a sword very similar to this is wielded by Kyros, a gladiator at the Colosseum in Dressrosa. He is so powerful with it that he's won over 3,000 battles at the Colosseum with this sword. He also absolutely soloed Diamante, which is actually the real diamond boss in One Piece. And now in Blox Fruits, he used this to plant trees. Not great, not bad. I'll actually probably put this under the pipe right above the shark saw in the C tier. Now we're moving on to the big dog, the Gravity King. I mean, just the fact that this is a rare sword and not a mythical is absolutely criminal. Very high damage, very fast, not only good for PvE, grinding, farming, but insane for PvPs. And it is so easy to use, guys. The Z move is a great combo starter, has a huge hitbox, and will pull your enemies close towards you. Like, look at this. The Lunar Blitz X move is actually great for stunning. Shoots your enemies up in the sky, then drops them onto the ground. In terms of the cons with this sword, honestly, there are not many. I guess the range isn't insanely high. And by the way, yeah, you unlock the sword by killing Fajita boss over here, which I just did. In the anime, of course, this Gravity Cane is used by Fujitora, the Admiral. He uses it with his gravity fruit. He is, of course, one of the strongest swordsmen in the entire world, and in large part due to the amazing sword that he uses, which he uses as a walking stick because he is blind. I mean, this guy's just bad. I don't know if this is controversial or not, guys. S tier. first one of the day. Well deserved. All right, next up, we got the Jeet. From what I know, though, this sword is actually grants the user pretty decent mobility with the smoke apparition. You can kind of just like teleport like a freaking Houdini out here. It's also good at stunning your enemies. And if you ever seen Smoke Admiral use it, this dude right here, who also happens to drop the Jeet, one of the moves actually will just completely blind you altogether. Which is pretty cool is the X move deals damage from where you stand and also at where you teleport to. Problem is both moves are a little bit difficult to hit, and then the moves are relatively low damage once again. In the anime, this is called the Nanashaku Jeet and is used by Smoker, another walking L next to Jack. This thing he uses in battle sometimes, but again, not to great effect. And it's not very durable, honestly, because if I had $1 for every time the Jeet broke in Smoker's hands, I would have $2 because it broke twice. One cool fact about the Jeet, though, is the tip of it is actually made out of sea stone, so once it touches a Devil Fruit user, it is able to easily subdue them. That's how he was able to take out Luffy. Yeah, we're dropping this once again in the C tier. I think this will be a decent spot for it right there. Up next, we got the Dragon Trident. This sword is an absolute beast. The skills are very good for PvP. It deals very high damage. The Sea Dragon Fury has insane AoE and is very easy to hit. Look how far it knocks the enemy back too. The range is also pretty decent on this thing. It is able to hit the enemy from pretty far away. The Water Dragon Shower, the X move, has the largest AoE effect out of every single sword in the entire game. Just overall amazing AoE and very big hitbox compared to other swords. So if you're new to PvPs that don't have great aim, this is your sword of choice. In the anime, however, I really don't know anybody that uses anything similar to the Dragon Trident, maybe except for Neptune, but then again, it doesn't really resemble the Dragon Trident, so solid sword. If only it was good for PvEs, I would put it in the A tier, but for now, we'll put it in the high Bs. All right, on to another big dog. We got the Saber. Look like a plain old sword, but it is one of the most difficult to unlock in the first C. You have to go through the entire Saber puzzle. This sword is insanely good for something that you can unlock in the first C. And when you get to either 1 million bounty or honor with it and kill a player, you will awaken the Saber V2. M1, honestly, pretty slow, but that's okay because it is easily made up for by its insanely high damage. The Z move, Deadly Rush, if you're able to hit every single move with it, it does the highest damage out of any other sword skill in the entire game. And the Triple Slash has pretty decent AoE. Honestly, this thing is absolutely insane for PvP, which makes perfect sense because in the anime, this is called the Griffin and is used by none other than Red Hair Shanks. That dude faced off just countless opponents with it with only one arm. And spoiler alert, this just dropped in the anime. This dude one-shot a kid with it. Like, come on. Saber easily goes into top of the A tier in terms of swords. Let's move back on to the not so great swords. Next up, we got the pole. This sword can be obtained at a very low chance from defeating the Thunder God over there. M1, relatively slow, and it is not really made up for by its skills. The X move, Lightning Ring, it does have relatively decent stun, but it is pretty slow to cast. So One Piece, this staff is called the Nonosama Bow, which is used by Neru, one of the most fearsome monsters in the One Piece universe. So honestly, he only carries around the staff kind of just as a flex to kill people with it that he thinks are not worthy to be killed by his lightning powers. Honestly, if that's not the hardest flex I ever heard in my life, I don't know what is. We'll put this in like the C tier. Honestly, I don't really see much use for it. Now, Pole V2 is a completely different story. So this sword is pretty difficult to obtain. Overall, I think you need 180 plus mastery on the Pole V1 plus a fully awakened Rumble Fruit plus completing the Rumble raid with the pole equipped. But honestly, it's pretty worth it. The M1 is like whatever, and in PvEs, it's not very great. But where the pole really shines is of course during PvPs. Both of these moves, X move, Hand of God, as well as the Electric Prison, very high stun moves, also with good AoE. So this sword is pretty much good with any PvP build that you can think of. We'll go ahead and rank it. I would say it is not quite like an A ranking sword. I would probably put this in the high Bs right there. Woo! I don't know why I'm hyping it up because this sword is not even that good. Oh, we got the Basento. Yeah, there it is. So this one's actually super expensive. Definitely the most expensive sword in the first C that you can purchase. 1 million bellies to unlock this. That is for the V1. For V2, you gotta use it to defeat Greybeard. Pretty difficult to obtain. I would say it is one of the strongest bosses. Honestly, the sword itself, M1 wise, relatively slow. The Z move, Windbreaker, has decent range and can be used to knock back your opponents. The V2, Quake Sphere, can be used to break Instinct. Range is is honestly not too bad either. But guys, the moves are all like ground-based, relatively slow to attack your opponents with. On the other hand, in One Piece, this is called the Murakomogiri. I don't know. And it is again one of the 12 supreme grade swords in the entire world, owned by none other than the homie Whitebeard. I've been playing Blox for way too long. It is one of the only 3 supreme grade swords ever shown in the world of One Piece, so you know this thing is hella rare. Whitebeards have used it for many decades to fight against extremely powerful opponents, such as Odin. The dude was holding the Ame no Ahabakiri and the Emma, which were used to eventually scar Kaido. And Whitebeard fended him off like it was nothing. Obviously, it would be a tier S in One Piece, but we're talking about Blox fruits, and it's really not that great. Bottom of the B tier. Now, moving on to the 3 legendary swords, starting with the Wando. So this sword, relatively speaking, for the second C, has pretty decent damage. So you can unlock the sword, of course, from the legendary sword dealers that randomly spawn around the second C. And there's only a 1 out of 3 chance of getting it, because the other chances are left to the other 2 legendary swords. So the Z move, continuous slashing, has a very long stun. Look at this. If you trap your opponent in this, it is over. And then, of course, we got the Dragon Gust, which has pretty decent range. And in One Piece, this is, of course, the Wado Ichimonji, used by none other than Zoro himself. This was given to him by his teacher back in Shimatsuki village, where he used to live and train as a swordsman. I am gonna go ahead and put the Wando over here on the top of the B tier. The next one is the Sadi. Very similar to the Wando, it is a very powerful sword, very high damage and good combo potential. The Z move, Sword Dance, not only is a mobility move, it can grab your targets regardless of whether they have instinct or not. It does not miss. And the True Air Slash has a very long range, very useful. Oh my god, honestly, the sword is nasty. Once again, guys, not really much downside to these swords. They're just very decent. Now, the Sadi's counterpart in One Piece is the Sendai Kitetsu, which is also used by Zoro. So this is another name sword. It's just not a great grade or supreme grade, and it also has a reputation of being completely cursed. It is said whoever wields it will just have terrible things happen to them. But this is another sword that has been with Zoro for a very long time. Ever since Loketown, he's fought countless battles with it, and it's withstood the test of time. So I personally like the Sadi a little more than the Wando, so I'm gonna put it above right there. There you go. Last but not least, we have my favorite out of the 3, the Shisui. So it has the same M1 as all the other swords. Very good damage. We got the True Quiet Rush, the Z move. Look at that pose, man. Thunder breathing first form right there. And then you got the Focus Shot, which has like longest range out of all 3 swords. Look at that thing. It's a freaking sniper rifle, and it's incredibly fast, so it's very difficult to dodge. Now, this sword was previously owned by Zoro, but before that, it was owned by Ryuma, legendary dragon slayer from Wano. Another one of the 21 great swords, and it is known as the Dark Blade. Not to be confused with the Yoru, but I think it's just a black sword. Put the Shisui above all the rest. Move aside. There it is. Next up, we got the Midnight Blade. I don't know what this sword is based off of. It literally looks like a transformer. Look at this thing. You could purchase this for like 100 ectoplasm over here at the haunted ship. It's got pretty high damage. It has good stuns as well as mobility. So the Z move has a very good hitbox. Should never be able to miss this shot, and it looks sick. And the X move, the Crescent Dash, not only is very strong, but is good for mobility as well. Oh, by the way, both these skills can hit multiple enemies, so I can't draw any comparisons to One Piece though, because I have no idea what this is. If you do, please let me know. But I would put the Midnight Blade honestly pretty high up, maybe like just below the Shisui. Sorry to separate the legendary swords, but gotta be honest. Moving on to the Coco. So the M1 on this one is very fast, but you do dash forward at the end, which bad for farming, of course. And you obtain this sword by killing the Order raid boss. Pretty difficult to obtain. The Z move could be a mobility move, the Electric Stab, and it has pretty decent knockback. Although it is like a single target dash attack, I do think the hitbox is relatively big, so like if I were to aim here, still hit him. The injection shot though has like a ridiculous range. Kind of like aim at your opponent too with it. Get murked! So in the anime, this sword is called the Kikoku and is used by Law, former warlord of the sea. This dude Law is a menace. He literally uses sword as a friggin' operating knife on people. This guy will be dissecting people with it. It's pretty gruesome and brutal. Honestly, I would say to use the Coco to its full effect, you would have to use the control fruits. So I would not recommend it. I'll probably put this in the C tier, man. Set your heart ablaze! Alright, I'm really excited to talk about this one. The Ring Goku. A very difficult sword to obtain because you would have to kill this guy over there to get a hidden key for very small chance. The Z move dashes very fast at your opponents. Yeah, my bad. Don't forget you saw that. We'll cut that part out. So yeah, you dash extremely fast, deals amazing damage, and also damage over time as it burns your opponents and lights them up on fire. And then you got the Z move, the burning slash, literally setting your heart ablaze. When you hold it, look at this. It breaks instinct upon impact, guys. And the AoE is relatively big when you hold it. Again, deals burn damage over time. Look at that! 7,000! Now, we gotta switch animes a bit because this sword is actually not even from One Piece. It is obviously inspired by the sword of Rengoku, the demon slayer Hashira, who uses the flame-breathing technique, hence the fire theme to the Rengoku. This sword is so legendary that they brought it from a complete different anime into Blox fruits. We're gonna put the Rengoku above the saber at the top of the A tier for now. Moving on, we have the Cavender, another fencing sword. As you can see, when you're holding it, you got your other arm in the back. The M1, again, use it as if you were fencing. It is a pretty high damage. Both moves are actually mobility moves. You got the piercing dash as well as the scattering dust. But the downside of it being, you know, both moves being dashing moves, it's really hard to PvE and even PvP with it. You can't really chain two combos together. So the Cavender is obviously dropped by defeating the beautiful pirate over in the third sea. In the anime, the sword is called the Durandal, which is owned by Cavendish, or as Luffy calls him, Cabbage. It is one of the named swords. We just don't know what grade it is, and apparently it is made of very flexible materials. It will never shatter on impact. Honestly, not bad, but not great either. This definitely belongs in the B tier. Alright, moving on. Even more legendary than the Wando, Sadi, and Shisui are the next two legendary swords. Starting with the Tashida. At first glance, it looks just like the Rengoku for some reason. This sword can be unlocked from the extremely difficult Tashida puzzle. I'm not gonna elaborate, but just know that it's not very easy to obtain. This is one of the best swords in the game because of its great combo potential, extremely high damage, which makes it good for PvPs and raids. So the Heavenly Lunges, the first move, can stun your enemy for an extremely long time if they don't dodge it, and it has high knockback, good AoE. And the Celestial Ravager not only has great range, it is also a mobility move. Look at this thing. That is the X that Oden put on Kaido's chest, isn't it? But of course, be sure to not miss the Heavenly Lunges, because if you do, it puts yourself in a very vulnerable position for your opponent to attack you. So in the anime, this is called the Ame no Habakiri, one of the two legendary swords owned by Oden, and is again one of the 21 great gray swords. Obviously, its abilities speak for itself with all the countless strong opponents that Oden has fought against. And to this day, the Ame no Habakiri and the Emma are the only two swords that was ever able to damage or injure Kaido. Overall, an amazing sword. I don't think I would put it above the Rengoku or the Saber. I'm gonna put it below the Saber. So the second half of the two legendary swords is the Yama. So the M1 is pretty much the same as the Tashida. The Hellish Slash and the Infernal Hurricane are both mobility moves. Very long range on the Hellish Slash, by the way. Infernal Hurricane also allows you to travel pretty far. Very good weapon for running away. And both of these skills are AoE attack. Now, the Emma has a very long history, of course. It was originally used by Oden, two sword style. He had both the Ame no Habakiri and the Emma. And later, somehow Zoro got his filthy hands on it and just completely went to town. It is one of the 21 great swords and is known to draw out the user's armament haki. It sucked out all of Zoro's blood in his arm. Like, look at this stick. This dude Zoro was able to use the Emma to once again deal damage to Kaido and bring back decades of nightmares for that man. I will put it alongside the Tashida, but I honestly don't know which one is better. Maybe just because I like the Yama a little more. There it goes. Alright, we got the Buddy Sword up next. This is one of the only swords in the game that has a face. So this one is obtained by killing Big Mommy in the back right there. Pretty good for grinding. You know, no M1 dash on the final move. In terms of skill, these skills are extremely fast, virtually undodgeable. The Z move has a pretty decent hitbox and insanely high damage output. You once again set your opponent to flames. Oh my god, yo, I was doing the showcase, not you. But yeah, the next move was gonna be the lightning wave. You just gotta aim it very well. Pew! Now, as you're holding this move, it allows you to heal faster. Look at that. Look, I'm healing. Faster than normal, at least. And it breaks instinct. What a sick skill to have. So in the anime, this sword is actually a hat, and it is owned by Big Mom. The reason why it has a face and is alive is because Big Mom used her soul powers to turn it into one of her homies. So this thing can even attack on its own, which is so damn scary, man. So we're gonna put the Buddy Sword actually in between the Sadi and the Wando. Like I said, crazy range, pretty good for combos. I think the this is justified. Spiky Trident. This is objectively one of the best weapons in the game. So the way you unlock the Spiky Trident is by defeating Katakuri. This weapon has great damage, very good for combos. All right, first move, the Do Hurricane locks the enemy in place, a great stun effect, very good mobility as well. Flying Trident also pulls your enemy closer towards you, which is great for extending combos. But the cool thing about it is not only does it pull enemies close to you, it can also pull you to different locations as well. Look at that. So this Trident in the anime One Piece is called the Mogura, which is used by Katakuri, the sweet commander of the Big Mom pirates. But in terms of his Trident, though, I think the only damage that he dealt with it is against himself. This dude literally stabbed himself in the stomach just to make the fight more fair for Luffy. What a boss. Spiky Trident is an easy entry into the A tier. Up next, we got the Dark Dagger. This thing is impossibly difficult to unlock. I got it on my first try, you know, a quick little flex. So you get it with a very small chance after defeating Indra in here. Honestly, it's not bad, other than the fact that it's tiny as hell. It's got a Z move, the Proficient Impale, that breaks instinct. And then the Shaming Slash actually stuns your opponent for a decent amount of time right there. They can't move. But honestly, just like this sword is difficult to spot, these moves are relatively more difficult to hit. Don't even get me started on his counterpart in the anime. Obviously, this is the sword that Mihawk wears around his neck, which he used to absolutely embarrass the living out of Zoro. One of the moments in One Piece that literally scarred me for life. If Zoro doesn't kill this man by the end of this anime, he will never live that moment down. I'll put this in the bottom of the A tier right there. All right, Shark Anchor. So I've been told this sword has very high damage, really good combo potential, AoE on all of its attacks, and good stun abilities. So the way you obtain the Shark Anchor is by killing a Terror Shark with an anchor attached to it. But in order to find that, you would need to craft a Monster Magnet first, and that's a whole ordeal on its own. So we got first the Typhoon Toss, large AoE and long range. Oh my god, I forgot how good this looked. And apparently the explosion at the end breaks instinct. And then the Armor Breaker is good mobility and also breaks instinct. I mean, all around, this sword is just nasty. If there's one bad thing I could say about this sword, the M1 is atrocious. You would not be able to tell the animation was just from a couple of months ago. And look at the last one, dude. It looks so bad. Shark Anchor, once again, does not exist in the anime One Piece. This is a crazy, crazy sword, man. I gotta do it, guys. I love the Rengoku. I gotta be fair. That's why you guys subscribe to this channel, right? You subscribe to the channel? We got the Fox Lamp next. This thing is also very impossible to obtain because you get it at the Kitsune Shrine. You probably have to do 20 of those before you can get your hands on this, but it is incredible, bro. Look how fast the M1 is, and there's no dash at the end. The Scorching Azure has a very long range and good stun abilities. Also, it just looks beautiful. This Infernal Firestorm, everything's just good about it. Decent range, good AoE, hits multiple enemies, amazing damage, also has mobility. Both of these attacks break instinct, by the way. So yeah, top tier for PvPs, top tier for PvEs. This thing is definitely going into the S tier though. We're putting this above the Gravity King. We have a new entry for the best sword in the game. We got the True Triple Katana. We got the Wando in the left hand. We got the Sadi in the right hand. We got the Shusui in the mouth. And what's bad about this sword? Absolutely nothing. What's great about it? Everything. So yeah, the M1 is relatively fast. Wolfang Rush has decent mobility. It is a good combo starter. The Dragon Hurricane has one of the biggest hitboxes among all the swords. Absolutely devastating and can pretty much disrupt any combo. Now, we already talked about each of the legendary swords individually, so I'm not gonna go into too much detail. But as you all know, Zoro uses the 3-sword style, and these are the 3 current swords that he holds. No bias, straight to the S tier. Don't even at me in the comments. I'm not trying to hear it. All right, the Hollow Sight. This sword can be obtained from killing the Reaper boss. The M1 on this is extremely fast and you do not dash forward. This is my best sword to auto-click with. So the Z move has a very large hitbox. Oh my gosh. Boom, look at that. You don't really have to aim and you can hit multiple targets at the same time, which is amazing. And the Soul Execution has great mobility and is amazing for breaking instinct. Because of that, this move is very, very good for not just farming, but also combos as well. So I don't really know many characters in One Piece that uses a scythe except for Caribou, this swamp booger dude, and I don't really feel like talking about him, so we're just gonna move on. Hollow Scythe, another lock for the S tier, right above the Soul King under the Fox Lamp. Alright guys, we're finally about to talk about the CDK, Cursed Dual Katana, probably the most popular swords in the game, and for very good reason. So once you unlock the Toshida and the Yama, you have to go through 6 excruciatingly difficult trials in order to get these swords, and let me just tell tell you, it is 100% worth it. Insanely fast M1 that does not dash forward, so you can auto-click with it. Farming with this thing is just mwah, chef's kisses. These swords are great for almost any build. So this move, if you hold it near your opponent, it can stun them for a very, very long time, put them in a tornado, and yeet them very far away. And the Slayer of Goliath, I mean, these are the exact same moves that injured Kaido, so what can I say? Very long range when held and amazing mobility. Literally everything that you can ask for in a pair of beautiful swords. And in the anime, we already talked about it. The Ami no Habakiri and the Emma are Odin's swords. He uses a two-sword style to defeat literally everybody in his path. Maybe except Roger. He got bodied by Roger. Straight to the SA. I love the True Triple Katana, but come on, man. It's just, there's no debate right there. All right, the Dark Blade. So the way to unlock the Yoru, there's no way around it. You gotta be rich. It costs Robux. Because it is a game pass. The M1 is, of course, unique to the Yoru itself. It does dash forward like a little bit, but it is pretty fast, honestly. 1000 slices is able to stun the enemy for a little bit, like a split second, and has decent range. And then we got the Dark Air Slash, which has two versions. You could either just throw it out, but if you hold it down like this and then launch it, it goes even faster. Very high damage. So all in all, pretty good sword if you're willing to pay to win. I mean, getting it in the first sea will make you completely overpowered. And of course, the Yoru is currently in the possession of none other than the world's greatest swordsman, Dracula Mihawk. One of the 12 supreme great swords in the hands of the greatest swordsman. This man can be seen easily dicing up ships with one swing of an arm with the Yoru and completely destroys every single sword fighting opponent that he's ever faced against. So if we were talking about One Piece, I would make a brand new god tier just to put this Yoru in. But since we're talking about Blox Fruits, it is actually not the best sword in the game. I would have to put this right below the Rengoku. It's definitely A tier, but it is not goated. All right, finally, ladies and gentlemen, the last sword on our list, the True Triple Dark Blade. Easily the most difficult sword to obtain in the game. I've been trying for like 3 years. Still no luck. You must be selected by the Blox Fruits owners to have the honor of wielding such powerful swords. I am simply not worthy. The skills are pretty much the same as the Dark Blade, but it does have the highest M1 click damage and the skills just 3 times more. And of course, combined with the OP Fun admin command, the damage is just infinite. Just look at this noob get bullied right here. How about instead of 1000 slices, we get 3000 slices. It's everything the Dark Blade is except 3 times more. Now, just picture this, everybody. Just imagine Mihawk going 3-sword style, holding 3 Yorus. That would be the end of the world as we know it. Just off the flex alone, the Dark Blade goes to the top of the S tier. If we're really being objective, I would say the CDK is still better, but come on, guys. It's the TTY. You gotta give it to it. Well, there it is. Every single sword in Blox Fruits ranked. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments down below. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.